The journey that leads Odysseus to the Phaeacian island of Scheria stretches across the entire Mediterranean, weaving together recognizable Bronze Age kingdoms. The symbolism of mythical landscapes blurs the lines between geography, history, and legend. From the ruins of Troy, he sails to Thrace, North Africa, Sicily, the Aeolian Islands, and the Strait of Messina before venturing into places that exist beyond the edge of the known world, the underworld, the islands of the Sirens, Circe, Calypso, and finally Scheria itself. Meanwhile, his son Telemachus undertakes his own parallel journey across mainland Greece, traveling to the courts of Nestor in Pylos and Menelaus in Sparta in search of news about his missing father. Together, their journeys create one of history's greatest travel narratives, blending real places with mythological realms. The framework of the story has shaped Western literature for nearly 3,000 years. After years of wandering through monsters, storms, and impossible trials, Odysseus reaches the one kingdom unlike any other in the ancient world, a place where civilization, generosity, and peace have reached their highest ideal. This is the utopia of Scheria, the island of the Phaeacians, ruled by King Alcinous, grandson of the sea god Poseidon. Like the biblical kings, he married his own niece, Queen Arete, whom he deeply respected and honored. The Phaeacians appear in more than one Greek legend, and once again they become the protectors of desperate travelers seeking refuge. After Jason and Medea steal the golden fleece from Colchis, they flee across the sea with King Aides and his armed fleet in relentless pursuit. Medea is no ordinary fugitive. She is accused of betraying her homeland and, in many versions of the myth, murdering her own brother to delay the pursuit. With capture certain, Jason and Medea sail to the island of the Phaeacians, where they place their fate in the hands of King Alcinous and Queen Arete. When the Colchians arrive, they demand that Alcinous surrender Medea so she can be returned to Colchis for judgment. Faced with a conflict between justice and compassion, the king proposes a wise compromise rooted in Greek custom. If Medea is still unmarried, he declares, she should be returned to her father. But if she is already the lawful wife of Jason, then no honorable king has the right to separate husband and wife, and she will remain under his protection. Queen Arete quietly ensures that the decision will favor the fleeing couple. Understanding both her husband's intentions and the danger facing Medea, she arranges for Jason and Medea to marry immediately and consummate their marriage before dawn. When the Colchians return the next morning expecting the king's judgment, Alcinous announces that the marriage has already taken place. Bound by his own ruling and by the sacred customs of hospitality and marriage, he refuses to surrender Medea. The pursuers have no choice but to abandon their claim, allowing Jason and Medea to continue their escape. Medea was a priestess of Hecate, the Greek goddess of magic, witchcraft, and the night. As a royal princess of Colchis and granddaughter of the sun god Helios, she combined her divine heritage with her role as a sacred servant to wield powerful herbal magic and potions. The ancient territory Colchis was the Golden Fleece. It is important to note that this region is the eastern end of the Black Sea bordering modern-day Turkey and Georgia. Medea killed her children primarily as an act of ultimate revenge against Jason, when abandoned her because she was foreign. He chose political power by marrying the Corinthian princess Glauce. Medea responded by destroying Jason's legacy. By murdering their two sons and Jason's lineage, Medea took revenge in a way that would matter most to men of the age. In other versions of the myth, Medea fears that once she flees into exile, the vengeful Corinthians would brutally torture or murder her son in retaliation for her being a foreigner. Few women in Greek mythology embody the power of ancient herbal knowledge more completely than Medea. Remembered today as both a healer and a sorceress, she stood at the intersection of royalty, religion, and the mysterious world of sacred plants. As the daughter of King Aides of Colchis, the granddaughter of the sun god Helios, and the niece of the famed enchantress Circe, Medea inherited a legendary bloodline deeply connected to divine power and the hidden forces of nature. But Medea's abilities were not based on her ancestry alone. She served as a high priestess of Hecate, the Greek goddess of magic, witchcraft, crossroads, and the night. As guardian of the sacred grove where the Golden Fleece was kept, Medea possessed specialized knowledge of pharmakeia, which was the ancient practice of preparing herbs, potions, and ritual substances. Some could also assume it included the knowledge of ritual-related mind-altering substances. In the ancient world, this knowledge was not viewed as simple medicine or superstition. It represented an understanding of nature's power to both preserve life and bring death. Medea's mastery of plants reflected this delicate balance. The same herbs that could heal wounds, ease suffering, or prepare participants for sacred ceremonies could also be transformed into deadly poisons. In her hands, nature became both creator and destroyer, capable of blessing or cursing depending upon how its gifts were used. This dual role mirrors the broader religious traditions of the ancient Mediterranean, where the boundary between healer, herbalist, priestess, and magician was often indistinguishable. Through Medea, Greek mythology preserves the memory of a world in which knowledge of plants was considered sacred wisdom, a gift from the gods that carried both tremendous responsibility and extraordinary power. It is interesting to consider the influences of Medea from her time with the Phaeacians long before the Phaeacian ship finally transports Odysseus to Ithaca in Book 13. While on board, he falls into a profound, death-like sleep during the entire journey. This induced, boundary-blurring sleep mirrors the soporific, forgetful properties of ancient pharmaca like Nepenthe, known as the anti-sorrow drug, or the blue lotus flower, separating his mythical wanderings from the reality of his homeland. Like the story of Odysseus, these episodes present the Phaeacians as guardians of Xenia, a people whose highest duty is to protect those who seek refuge under their care. Their kingdom becomes a place where wisdom, justice, and hospitality triumph over vengeance, reinforcing Homer's vision of the Phaeacians as one of the ancient world's most idealized societies. According to Homer, Phaeacians were descendants of Poseidon. But unlike the violent Cyclopes who also traced their lineage to the sea god, the civilization of Phaeacians represented the opposite of savagery. Phaeacians' ancestors had once lived near the lawless Cyclopes, until King Nausithous led him to the secluded island of Scheria. They creating a society defined by order, prosperity, and harmony. Their love of music, feasting, athletic competition, elegant craftsmanship, and magnificent ships has led many scholars to view Scheria as one of literature's earliest visions of a utopian civilization. After escaping the sea nymph Ogygian goddess Calypso, and surviving another storm sent by Poseidon, the battered and shipwrecked Odysseus washes ashore. He is discovered by Phaeacian princess Nausicaa, but rather than fearing the ragged stranger, Nausicaa provides Odysseus with food, clean clothing, and a flask of soft golden olive oil. In ancient Greece, olive oil functioned as a literal pharmacon, then functioned as a physical restorative, a cleanser, and a healing balm. Odysseus is led to her parents' palace. There, the Phaeacians demonstrate the highest expression of the sacred Greek duty of hospitality known as xenia. Before asking his name or demanding anything in return, they welcome Odysseus with lavish feasts, athletic games, music, dancing, and festive celebration. It is only after a court bard begins singing about the Trojan War and Odysseus quietly breaks into tears that King Alcinous realizes his mysterious guest carries a remarkable story. In that emotional moment, Odysseus finally reveals his identity and recounts the incredible journey that has kept him from home for 10 long years. The Phaeacians do more than listen, they become the final bridge between exile and homecoming. They lavish Odysseus with magnificent gifts and place him aboard one of their legendary ships, vessels so swift and technologically advanced that they seem to be magical. By morning, Odysseus awakens on the shores of Ithaca, his 20-year absence finally at an end. Yet even this final act of compassion comes with a terrible price. Poseidon was enraged that Odysseus escaped the consequences of blinding his son Polyphemus. He earns his fury toward the very people who helped his enemy. As the Phaeacian ship returns from Ithaca, the sea god transforms it into stone before the eyes of its people on the shore. He seals off Scheria behind towering mountains, ensuring that the island will never again offer safe passage to wandering strangers. The greatest example of hospitality in the Odyssey is met with divine punishment. In some post-Homeric Greek traditions, Calypso bore Odysseus a son, Latinus, though Circe is also named as Latinus's mother. In other accounts, Calypso bore Odysseus 2 children, Nausithous and Nausinous. In ancient Greek, Nausithous translates to swift ship or ship sickness, and Nausinous translates to ship-minded. In accounts by writers like Aristotle and Dictys of Crete, Odysseus's son Telemachus marries and has a son with the Phaeacian princess Nausicaa, the same princess who saved his father. Ancient sources vary on the child's exact name. He was primarily called Persepolis, which was also spelled Persepolis, and he was sometimes recorded as Polypores, which means sacker of cities. Persepolis is an ancient Greek name meaning city of the Persians, coined from Persis, in Persian, and polis meaning city. The native Persian name for this ceremonial capital was Parsa. The ancient city of Persepolis in modern-day Iran was founded as the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire by King Darius I in 518 BC. The city was expanded by his successors Xerxes I and Artaxerxes I, and eventually burned and looted by Alexander the Great in 330 BC. It is fair to consider as these incidents in Persia traveled as stories and then influenced writers, poets and intellectuals to create a story as the next sequel of Odysseus's offspring. It would also be an interesting irony to have Greeks claiming that the ancient Aegean hero could be linked to the parentage of the great city of the Persians. It is a creative way to explain the creation of Persepolis. It is also notable that the Hellenistic living demigod, Alexander, would destroy the great city on the whim of a drunken party, after slaughtering the Persians in vengeance over the destruction of Athens 150 years before. Clearly there is a fine line between mythology and history, and the key can often come from the influence of Apollo and Athena's realm of the arts and crafts, where ideas, meaning and purpose are transferred without language or writing. The supreme artists of the archaic world was the Minoan dynasty. Curiously, for generations in ancient times, historians have noticed that the world of the Phaeacians shares striking similarities with ancient Minoans, leading some scholars to suggest that Homer's idyllic kingdom may have been inspired by the last echoes of the Minoan civilization. Like the Minoans, the Phaeacians are remembered not as conquerors, but as master sailors whose wealth came from the sea rather than the battlefield. Their kingdom is defined by peace, prosperity, and extraordinary maritime skill. King Alcinous's magnificent palace, with its gleaming bronze walls, precious metals, lush gardens, and sophisticated craftsmanship, closely resembles the grand palace complexes uncovered at Knossos and other Minoan centers on Crete. Rather than emphasizing military glory, Homer presents a society devoted to music, dancing, feasting, athletic competitions. For the Minoans, that included bull jumping and the notorious story of the infamous King Midas of Crete. Even their ancient archaeological remains exude a style of refined living and advanced qualities of Minoan art and architecture. The social structure also invites comparison. Minoan frescoes portray women participating prominently in religious ceremonies, festivals. The influence of females in public life was rarely seen elsewhere in the ancient Mediterranean. Homer presents a similarly elevated role for Queen Arete, whose wisdom and authority are so respected that Odysseus is instructed to seek her favor before appealing to King Alcinous. Considering her influence previously with Jason and Medea, it is clear that Arete was a powerful figure unlike ancient women of the time. Religious traditions provide another fascinating connection. Bronze Age Crete was an important center for the worship of deities later associated with Leto, Artemis, and Apollo, attracting pilgrims and travelers from across the Aegean. In the Odyssey, the Phaeacians likewise become famous for welcoming strangers, protecting travelers, and providing safe passage across the sea. Their legendary hospitality reflects a culture whose identity is built upon receiving outsiders rather than conquering them. Even the Phaeacians' famous ships may preserve a distant memory of Minoan naval supremacy. Homer describes vessels so advanced that they seem almost magical, capable of self-navigation across the sea, guided almost as if by thought alone. While clearly poetic exaggeration, some historians see these enchanted ships as Homer's way of expressing the astonishing maritime dominance once enjoyed by Minoan Crete. Remains of their distinct pottery have been found throughout the ancient world, connecting them to much of the Bronze Age Mediterranean, centuries before the rise of classical Greece. These similarities have led some researchers to propose an even larger connection. The peaceful island kingdom of Scheria, with its immense wealth, advanced seafaring, and sudden disappearance from history, shares themes later found in Plato's account of Atlantis. Although there is no scholarly consensus identifying Scheria with Atlantis, both stories have been connected by some researchers to cultural memories surrounding the dramatic decline of the Minoan maritime empire following natural disasters and political collapse. Since antiquity, storytellers have attempted to place the Phaeacians in real locations such as Crete or the volcanic island of Thera. Homer's mythical kingdom may preserve fragments of a civilization that had already passed into legend by his own lifetime. Few places in the ancient Mediterranean have captured the imagination quite like the island of Thera, known today as Santorini. Its history reads almost like mythology, but it also raises many questions due to the geologic history that we can accurately understand with modern scientific understanding of volcanism. Thera was prosperous Minoan Bronze Age island civilization that experienced a catastrophic natural disaster, and centuries of legends have attempted to explain what had been lost. Because of its dramatic past, Thera has long been associated with stories of vanished kingdoms, including Plato's Atlantis, and some have even wondered whether it preserved memories that later found their way into Homer's Odyssey. The island was first settled during the Neolithic period around 4500 BCE, but it reached its greatest prosperity during the Bronze Age. Its thriving port city of Akrotiri became one of the Mediterranean's most sophisticated trading centers, closely connected to the powerful Minoan civilization on Crete and their trade networks. Then, around 1600 to 1500 BCE, disaster struck. One of the largest volcanic eruptions in recorded history shattered the island, burying Akrotiri beneath layers of ash and pumice while creating the spectacular flooded caldera that defines Santorini today. This story would align with the story of Poseidon's revenge on the Phaeacians for helping Odysseus. The massive explosion generated massive tsunamis and widespread environmental disruption throughout the eastern Mediterranean, contributing to the decline of Minoan influence and leaving behind a catastrophe that ancient civilizations would remember for centuries. After the eruption, Thera remained largely abandoned before gradually returning to history. In the early 1st millennium BCE, the island became known as Callista, meaning the most beautiful or most fair one. Archaeological excavations have uncovered remarkable frescoes, elegant multi-story buildings, advanced plumbing systems, and evidence of a wealthy maritime society whose influence stretched across the Aegean Sea. The island was settled first by Phoenician traders and later by Spartan Dorian colonists under a leader named Theras, from whom the island eventually took its name. Over the following centuries, its people were most likely from Phoenicians, Greek, and peoples of the Levant from the metallurgy trade. These people then spread farther, founding the North African colony of Cyrene after a devastating drought forced him to seek opportunities beyond the Aegean. As Greek power shifted between Athens and Sparta during the Peloponnesian War, Thera occupied an increasingly strategic position in Mediterranean politics. Later, it became an important naval outpost for the Ptolemaic rulers of Egypt before passing into Roman and Byzantine control. Yet despite these later chapters, it is the memory of Bronze Age Thera that continues to fascinate historians. A flourishing island civilization suddenly destroyed by nature, only to survive in fragments of myth and legend. The story includes the harsh reality of geologic history with the fluid stories of faraway places and great floods. Thera offers a compelling backdrop for stories of lost kingdoms. Whether inspiring Plato's Atlantis, influencing Homer's vision of Scheria, or simply reflecting humanity's attempt to remember an unimaginable catastrophe, Thera reminds us that some of history's greatest legendary stories may have been born from real events transformed by centuries of storytelling. And whether the Phaeacians were inspired by the Minoans or represent an idealized blend of several Bronze Age cultures, they do stand apart from every other society in the Odyssey. Just as the Minoans seem so modern and worldly compared to other ancients of that time. They embody the memory of a golden age, a civilization where prosperity came through trade instead of conquest, where hospitality was treated as a sacred duty, and where mastery of the sea became the defining mark of greatness. In that sense, the Phaeacians may be far more than mythical helpers. They may be Homer's poetic tribute to one of the ancient world's greatest lost civilizations. The kindness of the Phaeacians ultimately contributes to destroying their utopian ventures and selfless rescues. The Cyclops Polyphemus is the son of Poseidon, igniting a personal vendetta that haunted every step of Odysseus' voyage home. From that moment forward, Poseidon was determined that Odysseus would never again see the shores of Ithaca. But the Phaeacians, renowned throughout the ancient world as unmatched sailors and devoted hosts, knew nothing of this divine feud. Faithful to their sacred duty of hospitality of Xenia, they welcomed the weary stranger, celebrated him with magnificent gifts, and carried him safely to his homeland. To Poseidon, this was more than an act of generosity, it was a personal humiliation. The very people who claimed descent from him had openly aided the man he had sworn to punish. Their actions not only allowed Odysseus to escape the sea god's vengeance, but also undermined Poseidon's authority before the other Olympian gods. Enraged, Poseidon appealed to Zeus, asking permission to punish the Phaeacians for interfering with divine justice. Zeus agreed, allowing Poseidon to satisfy his wounded pride. Clearly Zeus did not care about Zeus's law, or maybe it was not his law at all. Xenia traces back to the ancient Greek word for hospitality and the rights of a guest. The word itself derives from xenos, meaning stranger, foreigner, or guest. Most interestingly, the word stems from the Proto-Indo-European root **t, which broadly signifies stranger, guest, or host. As the enchanted Phaeacian ship completed its final voyage and approached the harbor of Scheria, Poseidon struck. Before the eyes of the people gathered on shore, Poseidon transformed the magnificent vessel into stone, frozen forever at the entrance to the harbor. Watching this terrifying sign unfold, King Alcinous immediately remembered an ancient prophecy. Long ago, it had been foretold that Poseidon would one day punish the Phaeacians for helping strangers, sealing off their harbor and bringing an end to their unique way of life. Fearing that the prophecy was now being fulfilled, Alcinous abandoned the tradition of Xenia that had defined his people for generations. Never again would the Phaeacians escort lost travelers across the sea. Instead, the king ordered a great sacrifice of bulls to appease the angry sea god, marking the end of one of the most generous and idealized civilizations in all of Greek mythology. The Greek concept of Xenia, the sacred duty of welcoming and caring for strangers, did not disappear with Homer. It continued into the New Testament, where the same Greek word appears in meaningful ways. In Acts chapter 28 verse 23, the noun Xenia describes the lodging where the Apostle Paul receives visitors who come to hear him teach about the kingdom of God. In Philemon chapter 1 verse 22, Paul asks Philemon to prepare a Xenia, a place of lodging, for him in anticipation of his release. While these passages refer to hospitality rather than the elaborate guest friendship of Homeric Greece, they preserve the same underlying ideal, opening one's home to travelers and extending generosity to strangers. The continued use of this language demonstrates that Xenia remained a respected cultural and moral value in the Greek-speaking world, linking the hospitality of the Odyssey with the earliest Christian communities centuries later. To the ancient Greeks, Xenia was far more than simple hospitality. It was a sacred covenant that placed obligations on both the host and the guest. A traveler was not merely someone seeking food or shelter, but a person placed under the protection of Zeus Xenios, the divine guardian of strangers. Any violation of this sacred relationship invited the wrath of Zeus himself. According to Greek tradition, Hermes served as the messenger who observed human conduct, carrying news of both honorable and dishonorable behavior to the king of the gods. Throughout the Odyssey, divine favor often falls upon those who uphold the laws of Xenia, with Hermes repeatedly assisting Odysseus at critical moments in his journey. The rules of Xenia were remarkably specific. A host was expected to provide food, drink, a bath, clean clothing, a safe place to sleep, and protection from harm, all before asking the traveler's name or the purpose of the visit. Only after these basic needs had been met would introductions and conversation begin. The guest, however, carried responsibilities as well. Visitors were expected to respect the household, avoid causing harm or taking advantage of their hosts, and honestly reveal their identity and place of origin when asked. Hospitality was not a one-sided act of generosity, but a sacred relationship built upon trust, respect, and mutual obligation. These customs developed for practical reasons as much as religious ones. In a world connected by long-distance trade routes, seasonal migration, and dangerous overland and maritime travel, strangers frequently depended upon the kindness of those they encountered. The survival of merchants, pilgrims, sailors, and nomadic peoples often rested on the willingness of others to provide shelter and protection far from home. This same principle appears throughout the ancient Near East, particularly in traditional Bedouin culture. For Bedouin tribes, welcoming a stranger has long been considered a profound moral duty rather than a simple act of courtesy. Once a traveler accepts food or drink beneath a host's roof, an unbreakable bond of protection is established. Under customs such as mumalahar, neither host nor guest may harm the other while that relationship exists. Like Greek Xenia, Bedouin hospitality is founded on reciprocity, the sharing of provisions, mutual respect, and the promise of safety for those far from home. Across these different cultures, separated by geography but united by similar challenges, hospitality became far more than good manners. It was the social glue that allowed trade, diplomacy, and human relationships to flourish across the ancient world. Whether expressed through Greek Xenia or Bedouin tradition, the message remained the same. A stranger was never just a stranger. They were someone placed under a sacred obligation, and how they were treated reflected both the character of the household and the values of the civilization itself.